Hi, everyone. I am so glad you're still here. I've certainly learned a lot, even though we've been using Palantir Foundry for about 5 years. It's very interesting to see it used in these different spaces and have a chance to talk with you, some of you, especially last night. So my talk today is cancer, taming complexity, and I wanted to make sure that my Palantir staff, especially Catherine, said, Jeff, I don't think you really understand how unique your situation is. You've lived it for so many years. Make sure you give some background slides on really what's going on in this space. And so I wanted to do that. And so I'm from the National Cancer Institute, which is a United States federal organization. It's under the executive branch, so we work for the president. It's under the Department of Health and Human Services. We're in the National Institutes of Health, and we're the National Cancer Institute in there. So we have this federated model, which, to me, it's kind of, I'm so used to it, and I kind of think it's a little weak, but after hearing the Morgan Stanley thing, it's like, hey, I'm the CIO of the NCI. Hey, the CISO works for me. We accept the risk for the National Cancer Institute. I don't have to listen to someone else. So it's really nice that way. I put in here that we focus on rare cancers, but that's really only the intramural program, the part where we do the research. The National Cancer Institute is quite large. It focuses on all cancers, prevention, education, and funding 50 cancer centers throughout the United States. And what is biomedical research? We're researchers, not bringing products to market or anything like that. And so biomedical research is all the way from the beginning. Chemistry, training, lots of training grants, all the way through the body. Human beings are organisms. We're based on cells. We have tissues. And cancer is a genetic phenomenon that happens at the cellular level. And so we have to really understand what's going on. I have two things I want to tell you for sure about this phenomenon, and that is, one, it impacts us all, right? It really impacts us all. So everybody's in touch with that. I want to say my son worked at Jacobs, so hey, that's kind of cool because I was touched by Jacobs. And I also had a very good friend of mine who worked at the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewer District. So we're really connected in some ways, but that's kind of just a rare occurrence. But everybody knows somebody who's had cancer. Your parents, your family, everyone. And it affects so many people. And so the United States has put a lot of effort towards doing this, and it's a holistic solution. And there's many other groups doing that as well. I also want to say it's part of the healthcare system. So we've also been in the healthcare system in the United States, and we know how not really optimal that is. You go to your doctor, the doctor says, hey, I need to get some blood. And you say, well, can you do that? No, you got to make an appointment over at the blood draw place. They're going to draw the blood away from you. They're going to test it, and they're going to give me the results. Oh, yeah, you have to get an MRI. You have to get a CAT scan. That's over here. You have to go over there, get those results. A radiologist has to read those things. So there's an inherent complexity to how healthcare is provided, and it really is amazing because we have so many great technologies, but it hasn't really been reimagined. That to me is what I hear throughout all the talks. We have more data and more technology than our 1950s design can really handle. And so we're, of course, using more technology to try to solve that problem. So a little bit more about the NCI. So we are funded a lot, about $6.5 billion. And the part I'm going to talk about today, as the Chief Information Officer, I mostly focus on the money that we're spending at the NCI, which is about this $2 billion. And this biomedical research is, I wrote some notes so I could make sure I could say this properly. So it's basic research, like how do cells work? It's preclinical. It's like preparing all the things to make sure that when we give them to humans, doesn't kill them, right? So it's all preparation for that. It's the actual clinical work, recruiting patients, training patients, it's ethics, epidemiology. That was my note because I wanted to make sure you all understood that because it's basically the incidence, distribution, and control of disease. Well, epidemiology is all about what the pandemic was about. What is going on with this disease, right? And so we have a lot of that in cancer because while cancer is a genetic disease, your genome can be impacted by chemicals, sunshine, radiation, all kinds of things. And We also have a big focus on prevention. And so I have here our actual mission statement. NCI leads, conducts, supports cancer research across the nation to advance scientific knowledge and to help all people live longer and healthier lives. When you have a mission statement like that, you have a lot of amazing people work for you. And we have a lot. I don't know why my miscellaneous isn't there, but we have about 9,000 staff that work at the NCI proper in 3 locations in Bethesda. I'm kind of bummed that my statement was there because that was my other one I was going to tell you. Oh, that's right, I remember now. It's that biomedical research mostly is a competition. Scientists they come into graduate school, either MD or PhD school, they're trained in this competitive model. They're funded in a competitive model. And so that has worked so far very, very well. There really is no model to replace that. But it's not ideal because when you get to big data, that little model doesn't work well. And I mean little. Researchers, 5-person, 7-person teams. So how do you leverage big data when I don't even have a data scientist on my team, right? I have two doctors, a couple PhDs, and then some lab people to actually do the work. Well, how am I going to make sense of all these things? And so that's what I'm going to try to talk to you about today a little bit. So we have really 3 thrusts at the National Cancer Institute that we're using Palantir Foundry for. So this one is that we're actually trying to do a bunch of financial and business modeling on our portfolio. That's a lot of money we give out. We give it to a lot of different people. We give it for a lot of different cancers. And there's a lot of advocates that want to say, we want you to give more to our part. And so we try to make sure that what we're doing makes sense from a life-saving, from a healthcare standpoint. And so using Palantir is going to help us a lot in that space. We also have a lot of our scientific analysis pipelines. And that is just the thing that we do with our data. You might think, because you said, well, the human genome is sequenced. And I would say, well, it's kind of sequenced, but if I were to tell you, if I had the time to tell you how they really sequence your genome, if you were to get your genome sequenced, you'd be like, oh, well, that requires a lot of computational power to put all that together, and it does. And that's all changing. The genome is being understood more and more and more, and so these pipelines are changing. And since we're a whole bunch of disparate researchers that are put together, having those pipelines in Foundry allows us to share them so that there's a set of kind of validated pipelines that you can say, well, I'm not a big DNA sequencer in my lab, so I can just use all these pipelines. I don't need all these other people to do it. So it really, really helps us to maintain that set of all these different researchers, yet be focused on my actual work. Yet I can still use this high-order stuff. And then what I'm going to actually go through really quickly with a couple slides is this. We've been working on this for several years, and it is basically this model that we use to bring together all the data when people come to us for clinical trials. They have seen their doctors for maybe sometimes several years. We have a lot of data that we're bringing together for them. We're sequencing their tumors. We're sequencing their normal tissue. We're maybe collecting a lot of blood samples from their family members to see, can we figure out what's going on? I was kind of practicing the talk, and I'm like, exactly how am I going to say this, that we are not doing something that we know, right? No one knows how the human body works, really. We guess at how it works. That's what science is. We take a hypothesis, we test it, we think all this makes sense. And so the closer you look, the more you look, the smaller and smaller you look, well, the more variability you see. And so all of a sudden now we're at the stage of personalized medicine. So every treatment's going to be personalized for each person. And so we call this system the Connected Lab. And like many of you who use Foundry, you'd be very familiar with this screen, right? You take your data on the left. Those are all the systems that you have, and you can see they're represented by that little color chart on the right. And then you do a bunch of Python or R or some scripting. You move it into some kind of standardized data in the middle, and then you actually kind of end up with a report or something you can actually consume and make sense of on the right. So we, of course, do that, and the connected lab looks a little bit more like this. So this is what the scientists were doing by hand before we had Foundry. So we had one of the labs with 7 monitors sitting there in front, because the imaging is stored in the PACS system. The tissue system is stored in the electronic medical record, or sorry, the lab tests are stored in the electronic medical record. The tissue samples are stored in another system. So we're very much of a buy, not build, but when we bought all those pieces, well, how are we going to put all that together? And so we worked with Foundry for the last couple years because of course this is involving humans. We have to make sure it's right. We can't just put it together and say, hey, well, I think that seems good, sir. Here's your shot. You know, call us, right? It has to be right. And none of these systems were really designed to kind of be integrated. They were designed to store those things, specifically for those things, and you can go in there and look and have a lot of detail. So one thing is that very end product to the right, that is the connected lab starting point in terms of data. And so what I'm going to show you is actually notional, not dummy data. Okay, we do a lot of these demos to try to get the scientists to understand this will make their lives better, because since they're somewhat independent, they're very cautious about doing something different. And so this is a very simple screen of what they see. And so you can see there's the name, there's an ID, and then you can see this, you see it says familial diagnosis type, the HLRCC. That stands for the hereditary leiomyomatosis renal cell cancer, basically hereditary kidney cancer. And, well, have any of you heard of that? Of course not. It's somewhat rare, but that's how cancer is. It is very fine-grained defined to the point where we have over 1,000 different diseases now are considered cancer. And so this brings together a lot of the in this screen, you can see at the very top, there's 7 tabs. So this interface was built for us in Palantir. We don't currently, for this module, use a layer on top. This is very helpful for us because we have many little labs. We can't, we need to show success. I took some screenshots of Travis's thing where he used some great words there to say, we have to show success. I can't talk about how great a product is. I got to say, listen, here it is. Also, I wrote down that what's in it for me, because that's a great one too. So I just want to go quickly through this, and that in this disease, they found out that if we track the tumors and we remove the tumors, by the time they get to be 1 inch, the person can live a long time. If we do it when they're too small, it's too many surgeries. If we do it when they're too large, those tumors get out of control and we can't control them. So here they monitor, you can see the left kidney, right kidney, you can't maybe see that. One line is the left kidney, one line is the right kidney. Now remember, these people are not sitting in Bethesda with our doctors. They're at home, they're with their families, they're going into their normal doctor and getting these scans done, and that's data's brought in. And now the doctors can track this without question, right? Because it's right in this person's work. This slide has a ton of detail because it's, now I'm on the genomic variants tab, which is this gets to the massive complexity of cancer itself when you look at it very small. You can see a whole bunch of code here. What does this mean exactly? And there's 2 different boxes, the QCI variants, the VEP variants. Those are different modeling systems which tell me that this genomic change is a problem or this genomic change is no problem. And so the doctors are able to see all of this consolidated. And remember, each cell has its own set of DNA. That means it can have its own genetic variation. Well, cells are very small and we have a lot of them. And when one of those cells changes and gets more mutations, it starts to become a more aggressive cancer. So there was just some more slides in here, again, bringing in the lab clinical tests. And we can also bring in tissues, and so the doctors can see that. But one of the important things I wanted to point out to you was that you see the blue and green buttons, that it will actually take the researcher directly back to the imaging system, and they can then see the whole image analysis being done, all the samples that were collected on that patient. So we don't have to bring that all into Connected Lab. Actually, it is part of Connected Lab. And Foundry helps us connect back to that system that collects all that. So I'm going to end really quickly with this slide, and I want to really give props to Sam Michael. He's one of the CIOs from NIH here. He works at NCATS. He introduced us to Palantir Foundry, and when I saw it, I was like, this is exactly what we need to address our data problem. And I'm so happy that we've been able to work on it and get this put in place. Thank you all for your time.